Welcome to Coruzant Technologies, home of the Digital Executive Podcast. Welcome to the Digital Executive. Today's guest is Charles Cox. CEO Charles Cox has nearly 20 years of industry experience in media, entertainment, sports, and technology. Prior to building and growing SwingU over the last several years, Charles was the Director of International Finance and Business Development at ESPN, launching new networks and digital properties outside the U.S. in conjunction with the Walt Disney Company. Charles has also worked as a media and M&A investment banker, as well as a corporate attorney with the world's top sports law firm, Proskauer. He earned both his Juris Doctorate and MBA degrees from the University of Virginia and a BA from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. Well, good afternoon, Charles. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome, Charles. I appreciate you jumping on this late in the evening, but I want to jump right into the questions here. You've got quite the career as a lawyer in the sports industry, entertainment, and now you're the CEO of SwingU. Could you share with our audience the secret to your career growth and what inspires you?
There's no real secret to my career growth. Hopefully it's going to grow a lot more than where I am now. But, I've jumped around a lot in my career trying to figure out what I'm passionate about. I was a corporate attorney for a little while, did M&A, investment banking, worked at ESPN and corporate development. And then I left, those were all very large, typically very large firms, 500 employee plus firms in big cities like New York City and Charlotte, and obviously the Walt Disney Company with ESPN. But always had an entrepreneurial bug, just never could afford to do anything too entrepreneurial until about 6-7 years ago. I joined a startup and learned a lot very quickly, probably taking a role there that forced me to wear a bunch of different hats and, not only raise money, but figure out strategy and work on finance and business development and HR. And so all these variety of roles really quickly. So like anything in life, I think you learn quickest by doing, and sometimes taking a pay cut, being able to do more ends up paying dividends later in life. So I think that's something I would tell a young person looking to, be an entrepreneur and get up that career curve more quickly, that sometimes it's better to forego money and for experience and for more responsibility and more hands-on experience. Those things, they don't build a lot of wealth immediately, but they build, a lot of skills that you wouldn't otherwise get at a more specialized role at a bigger company. So, life's full of trade-offs. And so I think that's the trade-off that I think, young folks would need to make to get that career experience more quickly. And the growth isn't linear, right? You're going to make mistakes. You're going to learn on the job, and that's how you grow and develop and make smarter decisions long term. So, getting out there and taking some risk and, getting reps is a big piece of it.
Awesome. I appreciate you sharing that. Certainly, sometimes you just can't trade in that experience for anything else. So I appreciate that message. And Charles, as you know, everybody globally has had to make major shifts to adapt to this new normal, right? The pandemic. Could you share with us what you're doing to help your organization stay relevant in this economy?
Absolutely. We've been fortunate, despite all the horrible things going on with COVID-19 and the pandemic, and having several major industries really stall and some of which shut down. We've always had a work from home environment. Our environment and culture has been kind of an extension of my personality, which is, work hard, play hard mentality. It's a self-starter. So the people that succeed in our company are folks that don't need a lot of hand-holding, that are mature enough to work from home, folks that don't need a lot of monitoring. So even before COVID, we had a 1 day a week in-person culture, and, 4 days a week, people work from home. And, we didn't care if you were in Cabo or Dallas, Texas, or Hartford, Connecticut, where we're headquartered. It was a culture of, getting things done. If you get things done and you ever communicate, you have an attention to detail, you've succeeded at our company. So, we were fortunate in that we were ready culturally for COVID just because of the work from home environment we already had. And then secondly, being a golf app and media company, golf, we were very fortunate in golf being one of the only few sports that you can play safely with social distancing. And so golf, I think, very smartly made a lot of adjustments, not allowing golf carts, not allowing folks to pick up, not having rakes in the bunker, creating little inserts in golf holes, things like that made golf even safer. And so golf had a heck of a year. I think we saw rounds on our app have been up 100% more year over year, several months in a row since May. So we were fortunate. It wasn't a whole lot of skill. It was a lot of luck and being prepared to take advantage of some chips that fell in our favor.
That's really awesome. And I know a lot of people are struggling out there, but I'm glad that you've been able to navigate this challenging time. So thanks for sharing that, Charles. So, Charles, could you share maybe what new or emerging technologies you're employing in your tech stack with your golf app?
We have a top rated golf GPS scorecard and stats app. We've consistently invested into our product development team. So, we have 8 in house full time developers, as well as a small team of folks overseas that do occasional project work when we have overflow. But, we have a GPS rangefinder scorecard and stats app, and we feel like it's the most complete app on the game improvement side in the world. We just invested quite heavily into what they call a strokes gain statistical model. So we have a database of over 600,000 rounds where every single shot of every round was recorded by every golfer of varying handicaps. So you've got every shot recorded by folks that are at a tour player level, which is a better than scratch, better than zero handicap range, and 2 rounds played by, 20 to 30 handicaps that are below average amateurs. And so you can choose your target handicap, and based on your target handicap, it'll, in some light stats tracking after every hole, we can give you a handicap for every part of your game. So Charles Cox could be, an overall, he could be a 5 handicap, which means, typically he averages 5 strokes over par, give or take. But I could be a 10 handicap when it comes to driving, and a 0 handicap when it comes to approach shots to the green, 2 handicap when it comes to chipping and pitching, a better than scratch player when it comes to sand play, and then a 12 handicap for putting. And so based on that comparison versus your target handicap golfer, we give you a handicap for every part of your game, which allows you to look at, okay, where are you weakest and strongest relative to your target handicap? And based on that analysis, we try to focus the golfer on what part of his game, his or her game, if they practiced and used our drills inside the app for that particular part, would lower their handicap fastest, knowing that golfers typically don't take a lot of lessons and would rather play than practice. And so using those dynamics of the average golfer, knowing they like to play more than practice, knowing that golf is a very time consuming sport. If you've only got an hour a week to practice or a couple hours a month, it makes sense to focus on what part of your game is actually objectively going to lower your handicap relative to your target handicap, as opposed to a lot of golfers perceive their game incorrectly. In other words, you may have done something very poorly that is stuck in your mind. And so you think you're a really bad driver of the golf ball, but the data tells you, hey, you're actually not a bad driver of the golf ball relative to where you want to be. What you need to improve upon is putting or chipping and pitching, things that you would have never deduced yourself from just keeping scores. So that's a neat kind of AI-like strokes gain statistical model that we put into the app recently that we're really excited about. We just launched that in October and looking to make more enhancements to that and give our golfers more data. This is a sport that's increasingly becoming more data-driven on the consumer side. And so we're excited about that.
That's awesome. I love that, especially when you're working with analytics, especially predictive modeling, and it can help your golfers improve their game in a specific area. I think that's just super smart, and I'm glad you have that feature now. So thanks for sharing that, Charles. And Charles, last question. Everybody wants to know a little bit more about you, Charles Cox. Can you share something from your career experience that would be helpful for those looking to grow their career in technology or leadership?
Yeah, I think finding a great mentor is so huge. When you're young and you're looking to rise up the corporate ladder or, launch your own business, finding that woman or man that will mentor you and invest time with you, I think that's becoming tougher and tougher to find. And so when you find that person, right, and hanging on to them and trying to, if that's a boss or a manager, taking off as much as you can off his or her plate, and taking that 20% off his or her plate of that manager and making yourself indispensable to that person in return for, them mentoring you. And I think that's such a huge piece, because when you're young, you think you know everything, you really don't know very much, and you don't have that perspective till later in life. So I've only been able to get up the business experience ladder just through mentorship, and that's from having an incredible mentor, when I was a corporate attorney in New York, to incredible mentors when I was a banker, to having a great mentor at ESPN. I think whether it's conscious or I just got lucky, once you find that person, working that political game to hitch your wagon to that person, it's so important at a larger company. And I think it allows you to have an extraordinary experience relative to what a lot of folks have at large companies. So finding that mentor is huge. And, we try to do that ourselves, even at a small company level with 30 employees. making sure that everyone at the C-suite level has an open door policy, and we love to pass it down. And one of the neatest things to see is even when an employee leaves you, if he or she leaves you and takes a better job and a better title and goes off to do something entrepreneurial, that's just as good of a feeling from our perspective than having someone stick with you for 20 years. You can't blame someone for wanting to go start his or her own new thing. So that mentorship, I think finding that it's a key piece, and it's not easy, but it's definitely worth the extra effort and the extra politicking.
Thank you, Charles. I appreciate you sharing that insight. I know that nugget of wisdom will go far as we turn around and share your story with our global audience. So thanks again, Charles. And Charles, it was a pleasure having you on today, and I look forward to speaking with you real soon.
Yeah, thanks for your time. Really appreciate the invite.
Bye for now.